Okay, so let's get started. Our theme for this year is baby loss in the working woman. So why baby loss in the working woman? I think we did a focus group earlier this year and we did a survey, and that was one of the things that people said they wanted to talk about, work more. And also I kind of felt it's not spoken about that much in terms of loss in your career, in terms of loss in the workplace and line managers and what do you do, and also what are you entitled to. I don't think that's spoken about as much. So we thought we would explore that topic today. Okay, and the theme for Baby Loss Awareness Week overall is stepping stones again. So we're going to be looking at a bit later on the stepping stones to getting back into employment again. So just some information about SANS. SANS are the leading stillbirth and neonatal death charity in the UK. They exist to reduce the number of babies dying and to ensure that anyone affected by the death of babies receive the best possible care and support as long as they need it. SANS provide bereavement support services both nationally and through its free phone helpline and mobile app, online community and resources, and locally in the UK through a wide network of support groups. We have two befrienders at the back who are from one of the support groups that SANS run. The charity work in partnership with healthcare professionals, trusts and health boards, and offer a range of training programmes and bereavement care resources, which we'll hear about later from Claire, for every bereaved parent, family and people who work in leadership roles, healthcare professionals and in communities. And I thought to myself, when going through what information to share for those who will be watching on YouTube and for those in the room, and I still think it's so important to talk about all the charities, to talk about SANS, to remind you of what they do and other organisations, because not everybody knows. I only heard of SANS about 5 or 6 years ago. So I still think it's important to keep mentioning and to keep signposting these organisations. So we're doing that again today. Okay, so now to introduce our speakers, we have 3 amazing ladies who are with us today. If you could just introduce yourself and your job title and what you do, and then we'll go into hearing your stories. Start with Alpa, yeah?
Hello, so I'm Alpa Patel. I'm a BBC journalist. I report and present the news. I have a complicated story when it comes to baby loss. Lots of infertility, some IVF, and then two miscarriages. And yeah, it's such an honour to be asked to speak about this. I've reported on baby loss actually through work and experienced it myself. So it's really incredible to be able to talk about this in this environment.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Natasha Johi. I used to work for a courier company, but at the moment I'm a full-time mother and I classify myself as a mother of 2. I experienced my loss of my son in December 2020, and I met Tara online through Instagram, and she's helped me be where I am today, to smile, to feel good, to feel positive, and to know that I'm not alone.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Claire Worgan. My daughter was stillborn in 2016, but I currently work for SANS as the head of training and education. So I'm here to talk about the work that we do, particularly in the workplace, as well as my story.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, so we're going to hear a bit more from you all now about your story, your loss, and in relation to work. If you see me scribbling down, I'm thinking of questions or you've prompted something that I'd like to ask you about a bit later. Okay, before we start though, I thought I would share a little bit about my story in relation to work. So you might have heard me talk about it on social media. I'm an actress and a writer. I graduated from drama school. I literally thought I was going to be on the bill because I look very good in a police uniform. And in fact, one of the films that we made at drama school before graduating, I played a policewoman. So really set for, I got an agent, and literally the first kind of few years once you graduate, that's when you work hard, that's when you network. Then I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't in a secure relationship at the time, and I decided to continue with the pregnancy. And then I had my loss after 5 months, and it was just, my world completely crashed. And I remember I got a job, a screen project I accepted, and then I found out I was pregnant, and I just was thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to tell these producers I'm having a baby. Will they still want me to do this job? And they was like, yeah, Tara, we want you. You're great. Fine. And then I had my loss, and I had to go back to the producers and say, I know you said you still want me to do this job when I'm pregnant. I don't have the baby anymore. And I still did the job, and I look back and I don't think I should have done that. I wasn't in the right place to do that at all. And I think I didn't know that I could stop. I didn't know, actually, you don't have to continue to work. You're not letting other people down by saying, I can't do this screen project anymore, but I still went ahead and did it. And for me, I wish I knew more about what was available at the time. So again, I think that's another reason why it's important to talk about our experiences within work, especially because everyone does different things for a living, which I'm sure we'll hear later on. Okay, over to you now, Alpa.
I don't know where to start. What is it that what do you want to say?
In terms of when you found out about the loss, because you work with people as well.
I do, yeah. So yeah, it's funny. I was driving down in the car today to Stratford with. I now have 2 children, but a photo, photos pop up on your phone, don't they, from 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I think I was a completely different person 7 years ago. Like, I looked at that photo and there's none of the, the life that I've sort of lived in the last 7 years, the wrinkles, the grey hairs, the pain, the fun, So it was about 6 years ago that my husband and I, we've been together a very long time. We met at university, decided to have a baby. And it took a long time for me to get my head around this because I'm very much a career woman. And he wanted to have children when we were 24. And I finally came around to it when I was maybe 34. So by the time we decided, he was sort of like, so desperate. And obviously, it didn't turn out as planned. So 34, we started to try for a baby and it just wasn't working out. We started IVF when I was 36, 37. And a consultant told me at Guy's and St. Thomas's, you will never have your own children because, your eggs are not good enough. I'd started a round of IVF and we didn't respond, whatever. I learned a lot about this terminology, but I was naive. I didn't really research any of this. So when this terminology came my way, it was sort of like a bomb, like being in a war zone, like bomb, bomb, bomb. And I remember standing in the stairway of Guy's and St. Thomas's with my husband just sobbing, thinking, God, like, I left it so long and now I'm not going to be able to have my own children. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward a couple of years down the road because luckily I do work at the BBC, and interestingly, lots of women are going through infertility journeys, unsurprisingly. And I bumped into a lady called Kate Silverton who said to me, don't think it's over. Because we were told to try donor eggs. And so try this other consultant called Geeta Nargand. So we went to Geeta Nargand. She said, okay, you're challenged. I've got something called ovarian failure, I think. I think I blocked a lot of this out. But anyway, so we started this IVF and we did 3 back-to-back rounds. It was very stressful. I did all sorts of shifts. Like, I tried to block out as much as possible. I didn't want to really engage my brain with any of it. So I took on more shifts to pay for the IVF and not really have to think about it. So I'd work until like 12, 1 o'clock, I'd be exhausted. I'd stimulate in the morning and then do collections. And then I had to have a cyst out. And then, so I went from one shift straight into, went to Oxford, had some surgery, went out and did another shift. I mean, the things I did to block things out. And I reflect back and thought, gosh, that was very unhealthy behavior, really. But I wasn't really aware of it at the time. Anyway, we had a transfer that ended up in my son. But I had some embryos in the freezer. So we had my son, enjoyed life with him, and then I decided, that wave came over me, you really want another? Can I be greedy enough to have another? And we started that journey, and my consultant said, I strongly suggest you do PGS testing. But we just didn't have the money at the time. It was another £2,000 or £3,000 to do the PGS testing. So we decided, all right, we'll cast the die and see where it lands. And I got pregnant, and I was so happy about it. And during that time, I was actually filming a piece about baby loss for Baby Loss Awareness Week. So I was filming with 2 families. So with that came the caveat of telling them that I was pregnant, which was tough because these were late losses, but they were so supportive. And then I filmed the piece, edited the piece, and then had a miscarriage. And so all the testimonies that I'd been hearing in that few days and edited, suddenly I was on that journey of grieving, denial, and this was a prolonged loss. So it went in for a scan, and they said, oh, well, you have to wait another week. It might be fine. It might be a hematoma. Who knows? The early pregnancy unit wasn't very compassionate, shall we say, and there's pictures of babies on the side because the early EPU is attached to the pregnancy bit of the hospital. So, and we had to go there many, many times and wanted to know what was going on, and nobody could tell you, but they were like, oh, it could be this, it could be that, you might need surgery, you might need, they called it a DNC at the time. And so we went through a process of, is it going to be okay? And Googling in the middle of the night, how many pregnancies survive bleeding. And then we had the scan and the heartbeat had gone. So then I had to take the drugs, and it was all very awful. But those 2 families that I had interviewed during my baby loss awareness piece checked in with me every day. And I think that's what bonds you to people who go through this, that there's a special bond between people like us. And so that's how my work kind of bled into my life, really. So I'll pass it on to you.
Just before you do,
yes,
Alpa, I just wanted to ask, how were the BBC or how were your colleagues and in terms of line managers or those around you, HR and that kind of thing? How did you even tell them? Because I know many people don't.
Yes, so I did, because I was at work and I was pregnant. So my line manager was very good. She, first of all, it's a woman, not that it should matter, but it was, and she was very good. But secondly, she knew this baby had been conceived through IVF, so there was an extra sort of, not extra, but there was a sensitivity around it. Plus I was stupidly filming Baby Loss Awareness Week, but it just that's just the way things worked out. And so she was checking in on me anyway. Now, maybe some of us are aware that when you're going through IVF, you play games with yourself like, oh, if I'm going through IVF and filming a piece about baby loss, then I'm not going to miscarry. This would be really cruel, wouldn't it? This would be a really horrible thing to happen. And yet it happened. But she seemed to understand this crazy side of my brain. and understood that it was my brain trying to process things like this, and I was able to talk to her. So when I did have the miscarriage, I was immediately signed off, and the advice I was given was go to the doctor, get signed off, and then we don't need to talk to you for X period of days. This was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I think the policy has got even better. So after a week, I think my line manager called me to say, do you want to come back? And I said no. So I got signed off for another week. And then I eventually did a phased return, effectively, and was asked very much this. So I work in a world where I'm given stories, and often those stories involve tragedy. And this was during, like, just after COVID. Or not just after COVID, it was during the time of COVID. So I was told, right, can you interview this woman whose baby had COVID and almost died? And I was like, oh God, can I do this? But actually, it was such an uplifting story, and it was good to get back into things and see that life kind of moves on, and I could do it, because I think my confidence had been hit really quite badly, and I didn't want to be around people, and I certainly didn't want to be in the office, and I didn't want to have to explain that I was pregnant, now I'm not pregnant, and I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know what to say. And I was quite angry. I was very angry for a long time. So I didn't really want to shout at people. So I wanted to avoid the office. So yeah, but my line manager was excellent. Yeah, she was. But I think it is not necessarily the case with everyone at the BBC. It's just because she was good.
Thank you for sharing, Alpo. We're going to hear from Natasha now, and I know bits of your story where you didn't have a supportive environment, unfortunately, and some people here might be able to, that might resonate with them as well. Nana, could you close one of the doors for us, please? Thank you.
Okay, so September 2020, I found out that I was pregnant. So I worked for a courier company, and I used to do admin, and then I got a promotion to be a supervisor and to lead a team. So my manager was a female, my line manager, and sorry, I get really nervous talking about this. She basically, I wasn't feeling too well, and it was COVID, and I was like, oh my God, Boris Johnson said, high risk, let's work from home. And I thought, okay, and the morning sickness was really kicking me. Like, I could not wake up in the morning. Driving was difficult. I was wasting money taking cabs. And then I kind of told her, can I work from home? And she said, no, because of my position, I have to be in the office. And I said, okay. But my colleagues could work from home 3 days a week, but I had to be in 5 days a week. So I was like, okay. And it got to December now, and people were getting really sick. People were having COVID. And I was like, oh my God, like, I was telling my mum, I can't go into work. Like, I'm so scared I'm pregnant. And I had a conversation with her, and I told her, look, I found out I'm pregnant, and can I work from home? And she was like, I've got a meeting and I'm going to come back to you. And later on that day, I heard girls in the office talking and coming to me like, oh, Tasha, you pregnant? And I was like, yes, I am. But I didn't know she went to go tell them that I was lying because I just wanted to work from home. So I was like, okay, I took it upon myself to not come in the next week. And when I didn't come in, I didn't hear from her, and I didn't know she didn't come into work as well. So 2 days later, a driver hand-delivered a disciplinary letter to my house, knocked on my door, and I received a disciplinary. And I was like, okay. And this was because I didn't come into work. So now I was so overwhelmed. I was like, what do? I contacted my union, and I was like, look, this is what's happening. I need to speak to someone because I know my workplace and I know my manager. She is going to try to get rid of me. And obviously I'm pregnant. I can't afford to lose a job right back now. So I said, okay. My disciplinary was 4 days later. So I came into work and she wasn't in. And I was having my disciplinary with 2 males, managers, and a HR male was there. So I was like, okay. So we had the meeting, and I broke down and I started crying, and I said, this is bullying at work. And I had to literally take pictures of my scan, my maternity book to this disciplinary. And they said, oh, we're going to stop recording and this is not going to be on your record. And I said, but why? You sent me a letter and you said that I'm going for a disciplinary, so it has to be on the record and it has to be recorded. And they were like, I told them that I want to quit because I just thought, you know what, no one was listening to me. It was only my union. I walked out and he took over. And I could hear people in my office talking about me, gossiping as usual. So I was like, I can't be bothered. So I kind of left the office and I called my mum and I was like, can you come and pick me up because I don't want to be at work today. But my mum was at work, so my sister came to get me. And then my union was like, please stay behind because I need to talk to you. They have approved that, you know, you can work for the next 3 months and then you can leave. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I've got 3 months to kind of just work and, you know, get over this. And then a week later, they were like, I have to train somebody new. And I was like, but I'm meant to be working from home. And my hours got cut down. And my manager came back. Her name was Tracy. And she said, well, I'm not informed of this. And I said, because you never turned up for the disciplinary. That's why you're not aware. So there was this back and forth with me and her. We couldn't work in the same office. So I was assigned a new manager who was a male called David Perry. And I had to keep reporting to him, even like when I was having cramps, I was like morning sickness. And it was so uncomfortable because I was like, I have a line manager who's a female and she doesn't understand, plus she's a mother. And I was like, why can't she understand that I can't come and work? I can't, let me just work from home. So I was training this girl whilst having morning sickness, but thank God she was a quick learner, so she managed to understand the job. And I basically, the week of December, it was the first week of December, and I wasn't feeling too well. I was now doing 6 days a week. Like, my manager literally made me come in. I didn't have a choice. It was either I come in or I don't have a job, and Christmas was coming. So I was like, I'm buying baby stuff and I'm, you know, getting it delivered to work. And the 2 of my male friends at work used to just keep my packages and then load them in my car. And then the Saturday I worked, I was so tired, literally, because she said I had to do an early shift, 7 a.m. to I think 3. And I did the shift and I was like to David Perry, look, I'm in so much pain. I need to go home. I don't feel well. My partner came to pick me up, got home, and I just wasn't well at all. I was having a headache. I was having back pains. And I called the number on the maternity book. And when I called that number, I ended up going into Queen's Hospital. And when I went into Queen's, you know, they did their normal checks, baby, heartbeat, everything was fine. And then they said, hold on, can you kind of get undressed? We just want to do some examinations. They did the examination, left. And then I messaged my manager saying, David Perry, like, I don't think I'm going to come into work on Monday because I'm currently at the hospital. And he was like, it's perfectly fine. I'm going to deal with Tracy in regards to this. You'll have 2 days off. So I was so happy. And the doctors came in and I think it was 2 nurses. And they said, oh, unfortunately, you're not going to go home. And I was like, oh. I was like, why? And this was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And they said, oh, your blood pressure is high, number 1, and your cervix is open 4 centimeters. And I was like, 4 centimeters over? You know, you're kind of thinking like, what? And I was like, okay, so do I just wait till morning, see a specialist? What happens? And they said, no, you have to stay. You're going to be bedridden because you can give birth any minute from now. And I was 5 months pregnant, and 2 weeks before this, I found out I was having a boy. And in my family, we're just a family of many females. So I was the first one to have a boy. My sister has 3 kids, my mom has 2 daughters, and everybody else just has girls. So my dad was like, oh my God, finally there's gonna be a male in the house. And that was it. That was the day, 7th of December, worst day of my life. I was thinking about my manager. And it's the worst thing you could ever think of. Like, you just wish like someone could understand your pain, especially as a woman. And I called like my family and I was like, okay, apparently, you know, I can't go home. I might give birth any minute from now. And I got a transfer because Queen's told me, due to my gestation, they can't have this baby delivered here. I have to be transported to UCLH Hospital. So I was airlifted there because they were not too sure if I should go in an ambulance. And I went there and I called David Perry, my manager, and it was at night. And I was crying and I was like, this woman's put me through all this. I kept saying I wanted to work from home. She didn't understand. And now look where I am. This is the stress of coming into work. And I said, where do I go from here? Because I know her. She'll probably think I need to come into work, or she still thinks I'm lying, that I'm in hospital. So I took pictures and I sent an email, and I attached her. I CC'd her in that email, sending it to David Perry. And when I was at UCLH Hospital, the day, it was the 9th of December, the day I was going into labour, my phone was like messages and emails. I didn't have a look, so I gave birth at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I was told, yeah, this is your baby, and your baby's gonna go into the NICU, I think it is, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like everything's happening so fast, you know. And the worst thing was, a couple of days before, they told me, because my son is so young, like he could end up being like brain dead, disabled, like so many negative things. But it's not negative, it's just you need to be prepared for the outcome if your child survives. And I kind of thought, okay. And the worst thing is, it was COVID. I was going through this alone, so my partner was the only person allowed. So on the 12th of December, I got my son baptized, and on the 13th of December, 5 o'clock in the morning, the doctor came and was like, you know, you can call your whole family to come to the hospital because I don't think your son's going to make it. And I was like, you tell me now. I should tell everyone, yeah, because my son's dying now, you can all come and see him before he passes. I don't know, I just had so much anger. I just felt like everybody was just failing me. No one was beside me, and it was just me and my partner. And I thought, is this the kind of world we live in? People are not considerate of people's emotions and feelings and how they break the news to you. And I was a bit like, do you know what, you're doing it because it's your job. You're not doing it as an understanding parent. So I asked that doctor, do you have kids? And he said, yes. And I said, how would you feel if the tables were turned? Would you be able to handle this? I've just given birth and now you want me to rush downstairs and, you know, call my family to come. And I live like an hour away from here. So my family came, and within that moment that they were coming, my son had already passed, so it was too late. So they were like, you know, they can only see him for 5 minutes. And we went back to the room, and like Tara said, like you're sitting there and you're being told like, okay, he's going to be put into a fridge. Like there's so many things you're told, and it's like, do you plan a funeral now? And it's kind of like, yeah, you should start thinking about what you'd like to do. And you've just received your child, so now you've got to think about planning a funeral. And I said, you know what, God, give me the strength, because, you know, I was happy I was having a boy, and work's gone bad, lost my son. What's next? It's literally my family and my relationship, and I don't know how my relationship is going to be going forward because I'm not happy. And I went through my emails, and I saw my manager, Tracy, asked me, when am I coming back to work? And I thought, what? Like, is she literally choking? When am I coming back to work? I've just lost my child. And I called David Perry, and he said, you know what, she's going through a disciplinary because of this, and we're going to process your maternity leave from now. Don't contact anybody, don't pick up anything. I'll be the only one to contact you. And I said to him, please, can you just speak with my mom? Because I just don't want to speak to anyone at the moment. And my mum was just communicating with David Perry, and December, January, February, March, I didn't hear from my work. I didn't get a card, no condolences, nothing. And my colleague reached out to me on a private number, and she said to promise not to tell, you know, like she's contacted us, but apparently Tracy told them not to reach out to me, told them that, you know, I've gone on maternity leave and I've had a baby. And I was like, what, really? Is that what she's telling people in the office? And she said, yeah, you've had a boy. So she's gone and spoken my whole business and doesn't know what I'm going through. I'm back home, discharged from the hospital. And September came, and I got a letter from HR asking if I'm going to come back to work, or if they need to send me my P45. And yeah, that's how things kind of shattered. My world kind of shattered from 2020 and 2021. And you kind of think like, what's your purpose now? Your job doesn't care about you. you think HR's there, because I was thinking, I'm going to go through HR. I've got all this paperwork and all the text messages and the evidence, and they've just done the same thing, asking me if I'm coming back to work or should I take my P45. And that's how literally my world kind of changed. And I stand strong today because of my son, because I believe for those 4 days that he was able to, kick and survive and stay strong and still cry, I'm not going to break down. I want him to be proud where he is. And I kind of thought, I'm so scared of ever having another child. I was so scared, like, going back to work. What about if I get pregnant, if I'm at work and I get another horrible manager, or I go through the same thing and they don't understand? But God bless me. So I have a daughter now, another girl to the family. And it's amazing. Everything that I wanted to do with my son and I had planned, I've done it with my daughter. So it's kind of given me some sort of mental stability to know that, I can still fulfill my purpose as a mother, and all that I wanted to provide for my son, I'm able to provide to my daughter, and, feel like I fit in as a mother. And, some people don't understand. They're just, are you a mother of, how many kids do you have? And I'm like, I'm a mother of 2. And they're like, okay, so where's your other child? And I'm like, you kind of think I'm not going to get into that. The whole explaining it's very long and it can trigger you. But I think now I've accepted the situation. I've accepted leaving a job without being contacted or an apology. And it just goes to show we do live in a world where some people are nice and considerate and others are just not. And you've got to pick up your socks and put them on, tie your shoelaces and get on with life. That's how I've kind of gotten with life. And I never thought like I'd be here today. And a lot of it goes to Tara. And I give her so much thanks for just making me feel appreciated, especially on Mother's Day as well. And for making me understand that I will get here, because 2020, I never thought I would be here today. And she did tell me it will take time. I don't know how long, but you'll get there. And yeah, here I am today. So thank you so much, Tara, for all that you've done.
Thank you for sharing. Just before we hear from Claire, just wanted to ask you, hearing that your manager was like the Wicked Witch of the West, how did you make peace with that? Because I'm sitting here thinking, I would have called my uncle, my brother, my this, I would have done this to her. And you're just so calm telling it. How did you, or even sometimes we think, I hope you get stung by a bee, or I hope this happens to you, or whatever it might be. How did you, I don't know, I want to say forgive. I know everyone has different kinds of viewpoints on whether or not to forgive, but how did you make peace with that so that you're not spray painting the building where you used to work, or telling people never work here again kind of thing?
It's taken a while. It's been hard. My sister, my family, I'm not going to lie, they went to go roll up at my workplace, and they were, security was called and stuff. And I kind of told them, please don't do that, because, I'm just going to look like that typical girl with the crazy family, so don't do it. But I'm a Christian and I'm a strong believer. And I think it's my prayer and my fasting and God literally just listening to me to find a space in my heart to forgive that woman. But I've always said one day if I do meet her, I will tell her, you really did hurt me, but I can't force an apology. She was never going to be apologetic, because she couldn't realize and see that what she was doing at the workplace, making rumors, lying, and I just had to be strong. And I told myself she's apologized mentally in order to move on. I kind of said, yeah, she's apologized somehow. So Tasha, get on with it, because it would literally hold me back. It would hold me, and I would have so much anger. I don't think I would be a happy person, because I wouldn't be open to, allowing people to come close to me, because I'm like, I built a good relationship. I really helped her. I worked hard for my job and my promotion, and she just dropped me. She neglected me. I felt like, a child that's been neglected by their mother. And I just kind of said, you know what, Tasha, it's okay. You've got your real family and you've got your real people around you. A job's a job. And I felt like a chair that's been used, and yeah, it's tired now. The recliner doesn't work. Get a new one, and that's just how you have to see it. You can be replaced within a heartbeat, so you've just got to kind of move on with life.
Thank you. We're going to hear from Claire now, and also how you came to work with SANS as well. I know a bit of your story, and it raises something that I'm going to touch on a bit later as well.
Okay. So I guess a bit about me first, my background before I talk about SANS. So my first pregnancy was 2015, and I didn't tell work. I had a miscarriage at 12 weeks. At the 12-week scan, we found that there was no heartbeat, but I hadn't told work that I was pregnant. I used to work in engineering, so I didn't work at SANS then. I think if I worked at SANS, I would know they would be supportive. I worked in an engineering company, and I don't think we told anyone apart from close family and friends, because it's not something that you do. And then I had a D&C as well, but I had to wait maybe 2 weeks for the appointment. But again, just went back to work. Didn't even occur to me to tell work, but looking back, I should have. I should have told them, and I should have taken time off, because I was not okay, not at all, physically or emotionally. But then very keen to keep going forward and get pregnant again. So I got pregnant the following year. Scared, very scared that I was going to have another miscarriage. That time we told everyone very early, because I think I'd learnt from the first miscarriage that I needed people around me to know what was happening. So I think we literally told everyone around us from the day we found out we were pregnant. But I was still very scared that she wouldn't arrive, and I didn't really believe I was pregnant until very late, until I was term. I remember thinking, okay, I've made it to, I don't know, 30 weeks. Even if she comes out now, she'll be okay. She will go to special care and they'll do whatever they do. There's doctors and she'll be fine. That's when I relaxed, and that's when I started to buy the nursery equipment and all of that stuff. But she wasn't, so work were lovely, so I had a leaving due, and I've actually finished work for maternity leave the week before I went into labour. And then when I went into labour, I knew there was something wrong, went into hospital. And as soon as I got there, they said that she had no heartbeat. So that was on a Tuesday morning. And then my daughter Alice, was born that evening, Tuesday night. And then she was stillborn. Yeah, I mentioned that. And then we spent 4 days with her in the hospital. I just could not leave her. I was so scared of her not arriving, but then because of the miscarriage. But then when she had arrived, I was just so happy. It was really hard to explain. I was just so happy that she was here and real and in my arms. I just did not want to leave that hospital. But eventually, like your brain, like you say, you get processed and you get used. You realise what's happened and the reality, and it took a long, long time. And then we left hospital on the Friday. And I think I just text work. I text my boss to just tell him what had happened. And looking back now, I can't imagine what he must have thought on the other end of the phone, or the other end of the message. He was lovely. He just sent a message saying how sorry he was. And I remember being in the hospital and saying to the midwife and the doctor, I can't go back to work. But I thought, I'm going to have to go back on Monday, because that's what you think. Okay, there's no baby. I need to go back. But there was definitely no going back. And I said to the doctor, I can't go back. She didn't actually know what entitlement. She didn't know that I was entitled to maternity leave. And I obviously didn't. So she gave me a sick note, which I didn't need because I was entitled to maternity leave, which I found out from my work. My boss was lovely. And he messaged me saying, you're on maternity, don't worry about it, and we'll talk about it in the future. And then I met up with him. It was hard. He came to the funeral. My boss came to Alice's funeral, which was really lovely of him. And he invited colleagues. The colleagues that I was close to, I would have called friends, but they couldn't. People couldn't face it. I think this is the thing about pregnancy and baby loss, and it's kind of my passion, is people don't know what to say. They don't know how to approach it. And I was just devastated that people wouldn't come. But I do understand it now, but at the time it was just heartbreaking. So I was really worried about going back to work. I never really thought about going back. I thought I'll think about it in the future. I obviously had, I think, 12 months maternity leave. But we got pregnant again about 3 or 4 months after Alice had died, so it was quite quickly. And actually, when we went back to the hospital for the post-mortem results was the day that we'd found out we were pregnant again. So we were talking to the consultant about care in the next pregnancy, but we were literally only just pregnant. So then I started thinking maybe I do need to go back to it because I need to go on maternity leave again. I was like, oh God, I can't not go back. So I went back, and I think I probably wouldn't have gone back so soon if I wasn't pregnant again. I only went back again because I was conscious of needing maternity leave. But then we had another miscarriage. So at 12 weeks, exactly the same thing happened. It was a 12-week scan. Oh no, it was a bit earlier because we were having earlier scans because of the miscarriage and because of Alice. And I hadn't told work I was pregnant. Again, very conscious I'd just come back from maternity and needed to go again. So I hadn't told them, but I did have to tell them that I'd had a miscarriage because it absolutely broke me. There's no way I could have worked. So I took time off. I went back off work. My boss was lovely. My colleagues really struggled with what to say. So when I went back, it was really straight. I worked in an open plan office, and as soon as I walked in, everything was the same, but I was different. No one spoke to me. Like, I literally walked in and sat at my desk, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, literally no one said anything. They just carried on with work. And I remember looking around thinking, oh, okay, this was just weird. And I felt so uncomfortable. So I remember them talking about the weather and work and things like that, but this huge thing just happened to me and no one's mentioned it. And we used to have an office, like, weekly catch-up. So I said, my boss was lovely. So he took me to the one side and said, how are you doing? You know, take it easy. I said, no one's spoken to me. I think I need to tell everyone that it's okay to speak to me. Otherwise, I'm just going to, like, shrink. So in the staff meeting, I just stood up and said, this is what's happened to me. Alice has died, but I'm really comfortable. If you want to ask me any questions, please, like, don't ignore me. Yes. Is basically what I said, which really helped. I think it eased the room, so everyone relaxed a bit and thought, oh, okay, she said it out loud. And a couple of people did come up to me. People I didn't really know came up and just said, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise, or I'm sorry about what happened. And that was all I needed, that acknowledgement at that time. And then after the second miscarriage, I loved my job. I was good at it, but I didn't really love it. And my midwife was absolutely amazing. She wasn't a bereavement midwife. I didn't know they existed at the time, but she was really, really amazing. She's the one, really, because I seem okay now, I think it's because of her. She was with me when I needed someone most, and she was really, really strong. So she inspired me, and I remember going back to see her probably 2 or 3 weeks after Alice had died, just to say thank you, take her a card and chocolates, you know, like you do. And it just came out, I'd like to be a midwife. It hadn't occurred to me before, actually. It probably since Alice had died. And she was very supportive. She said, yeah, you should definitely do it. It's wonderful. So I did. So I went to the local uni's open days. It was around the right time. So I went to the open days, learned about what you needed to do as a qualification. I did have the kind of background qualifications to get into the course. And then I went on to train as a midwife the following year, which in hindsight obviously wasn't thinking very straight, but it was one of the best decisions I've made. This is kind of the advice I always give people. Everyone around me thought I was losing and I was not okay and I was doing the wrong thing, but I knew in my heart that this is what I needed to do. And it was hard. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else unless you're 100%. It was hard work delivering babies. In general, I mean, the NHS is a hard place to work anyway, but when you've been through that, but I certainly don't regret it. It was definitely the right decision. I learnt very early that actually my midwife was quite unique, and even in maternity service, people struggle. Healthcare professionals struggle knowing what to do and what to say. You'd assume that they would have the training and they would know, but that often isn't the case. And very early on, I realised that a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my student friends didn't know what to say to me or how to ask me or how to be around me, which I just found very strange. So then I naturally, I guess, gravitated towards bereavement, which I never really expected to. I never went into it to specialise in bereavement, but I guess I did when I realised that I could do, and there's so many other people that couldn't. But then the job at SANS came up. I just saw it advertised on social media, and it just felt like the perfect job for me. And I just applied and thought, well, you know, if it's, I really, really wanted it. And I knew I'd be devastated if I didn't get it. But what I tried to tell myself, to try and make sure that I was safe, is if it's for me, it'll happen. If it's not for me, then I need to let it go. But I did. So then I joined SANS as a staff. I volunteered as a befriender and as a parent speaker before that. So I was aware of SANS. And then I joined the staff in 2019. And I've been there ever since. So I'm head of training and education, and most of the work that my team does is bereavement care training for healthcare staff, maternity services, neonatal services, and a lot in early pregnancy as well, around things like compassionate communication and breaking bad news and just being really safe, psychologically safe care. Our next step is to look at clinical care and actually make sure that the level of clinical care is there. But probably over the last 3 or 4 years, there's an increasing amount of requests from workplaces, which I think is a positive step forward, around training for employees, but particularly for line managers and HR managers. So really good employers are starting to put in place pregnancy and baby loss policies. And then if you put a policy in place, then you need to equip your staff with the skills and the confidence to be able to have conversations and sit with people that are in pain. So probably over the last 4 years, we've been providing more and more services for workplaces. There is still some poor workplaces, as we heard, and some really bad practice. But it will take time, but I'm hoping that with the more we can do and the more conversations we have with work, then it will get better.
Loss and then working with babies or with children, because I was thinking to myself, there might be people who are school teachers or who work with young babies, and you said you went straight and studied midwifery. How does that, did it affect you or did it not? And for yourself as well, talking to other women about their loss and having your loss, what was that psychology like for you?
It felt like the right thing to do. It was hard. What it was is it threw me in the deep end. I had to deal with all of it. I couldn't avoid any of it. So every day was a challenge, and I had to deal with what was in front of me and the emotions that were coming up. I did have a counsellor who was really, really good, and people around me. I couldn't avoid anything, which I think in the long term has helped me. Like, I remembered literally having physical anxiety attacks and having to deal with them on the ward or deal with them in women's homes, but they wouldn't know. But I would never want to put anyone else through it, but going through that and knowing that I was safe and knowing kind of the trauma responses, knowing that I was safe and actually I was doing a good thing, it really helped me kind of recover and process the trauma and what had happened. On the flip side of that, it also helped me see, because there were so many live and happy families that I was working with and was there at their most joyous time. It helped me realise that because I was solo, that actually there is a lot of joy in the world. It sounds really, this is going to be a strange thing to say, but it made me realise that not all babies die, which is where I was. And actually it was a lovely thing, and being part of that, their joy, and contributing and knowing that I could help them, even if it was just, breastfeeding or changing a nappy, really did help. So I knew that I was doing something good, and I knew it was helping me.
Thank you.
I would say I'm quite senior at the BBC, so I can say no to the sorts of stories I want to do. But like Clea, I was drawn to people who'd been through something similar as a sort of bonding, looking for solidarity or some sort of understanding that perhaps you can't get from your own family or even friends because they haven't been through that experience. So I looked for it, and I wanted to do baby loss stories about premature birth, women going through infertility, some women or couples who'd never managed to have a baby after loss. I was looking to do those stories. I'd say, and maybe this, even in talking about this, actually I'm reaching a bit of understanding. I really didn't want to go to the hospital, and I understand that now. I really didn't like hospitals. I didn't want to be anywhere near a hospital. I certainly didn't want to be in the maternity unit or near the EPU. And it would be like a physical response that my husband, he'd been through a trauma, but he like, it was like a shiver would go down my spine. And actually, I remember the waiting room and seeing other women in this awful, tortuous pain of not knowing if their pregnancy was going to survive or not. And I remember even those images, they come back to me even now, really. So I was drawn to the people and not the place. And I think I had some counselling during my second pregnancy, and I didn't realise it at the time, but I was in quite a bad state. So I was sort of fast-tracked into counselling. And the counsellor, who was Asian, I think that helped me understand a lot about my trauma, but also helped me to maybe find the strength to confront some of the stuff that I hadn't confronted whilst pregnant. I think it's a strange place to be sometimes. And understanding, because I was very scared that I was going to lose my pregnancy. And because I didn't have, because of maybe what I'd said, that if you go, like the pieces in my head had made connections that needed to be broken. So IVF, it couldn't end in a miscarriage. That would be really, really awful and cruel and terrible. And it did. So I had to rewire my brain in a way. Just to say, having a woman of colour be my counsellor really helped me. It forged a kind of solidarity. She hadn't been through a lot. I didn't know much about her, but she understood my cultural background a little bit. And I felt that really helped me a lot. I didn't realise it in the beginning. I was very angry at the beginning, so I didn't want to talk. I just sort of sat there in this rage of, I don't want to be forced into this counselling. I don't have time for it. I'm very busy and I just don't want to be here. And also it was on Zoom, which I hated. I was like, COVID is so cruel. Now I have to sit in front of a laptop and talk about my feelings. I really don't want to. I'm not in a place where I want to do this. But somehow she managed to get me to open up. And I think that having that solidarity in race kind of helped open the door. So I know I'm jumping about a bit, but through all these different things, I managed to move on. But I did find, actually, maybe I found it very difficult with discussions with my mother, who would say terrible things like, it'll be okay, you'll move on, you'll have another baby, it'll be fine. And I really resented all of that, because I was like, it's okay for you. Like, she, there were times when she'd say, I never had problems in pregnancy. I don't understand why you're having these problems, Albert. And I was like, I don't understand how you can say stuff like this. But anyway, I think that the counselling was quite formative for me. It helped me survive. So, and it provided the base where I could move into other spaces. But at the same time, by the way, my midwife had also lost a child during my second pregnancy. During my first and second pregnancy. Well, actually, during my first pregnancy, I found her. And then when I was pregnant again, I had a different midwife, but I tracked my first midwife down because I knew I needed her for my survival. And I say survival because it was really like I was such a broken person during the second pregnancy. My husband, I wasn't really able to even talk to my husband about what a dark place I was in, because I didn't really want to admit it to myself, because I felt very weak, and I felt like I was failing at life and I was failing at work, and I didn't really want to open myself up for any sort of judgment or anything like that. So my first midwife, who I stalked and found and made her be my midwife, really helped me through my second pregnancy. And I still think of Shelley today and how she helped me through both my pregnancies, and the compassion and understanding that was given to me, even though she was so busy. And I mean, I can't even tell you how much she was doing over her hours, doing admin 7 days a week. But she did it because she cared beyond her job title. So yes, yes, that's how I got through both pregnancies and my work.
Thank you for sharing, ladies. It's much appreciated. We've now come to the end of our recorded segment. Thank you to everyone who is watching on YouTube. And after this video, you're going to see some signposts of some organisations you can contact. Thank you.